about making money, part of keeping your money is mitigating risk. So what you need a guy like Ophir on your team is to mitigate risk, not to ever make decisions out of fear. That, like, my DNA will not allow me to ever make decisions because I'm scared. Never, never, ever, ever. However, I will definitely look at mitigating my risk, and that's having a good attorney on your side does that for you. One that's reachable, that's not you're gonna have to sign some $100,000 retainer from some law firm somewhere to just discuss getting a tenant out or something like that. So this is why it's important to have it, because we march forward fearless, but that doesn't mean we don't mitigate risk when we can. We're not foolish, right? So with that, Ophir, if you can come on up. And welcome.
Hi everyone.
Hi.
As Armando said, I'm an attorney. I've been practicing a little bit over 17 years. And when an investor comes to me, usually there's two things that I look at. How do I protect the investor going in? And what headaches is the investor purchasing? There is no perfect property. I hear all the time, oh, I thought this was the greatest deal, and I found out we had this horrible easement, now we're stuck with this problem. So we take an approach of how you coming in and what is the battle in front of you. A lot of times investors are looking at just getting into the deal like these guys were talking about. And that is the hardest part. Closing a deal, getting a deal, but what happens once you're in it? So one of the things Armando brought up was, how do I structure it? Right? What's going to be my entity? Am I going to be a corporation? Am I going to be an LLC? Well, that partly depends on what are you purchasing. So for example, let's say you're purchasing an apartment building. Definitely, my recommendation would be put the apartment building typically in an LLC. It's a very easy structure to create, very inexpensive structure, has very little formality. So for example, if you create a corporation, you have to have annual meetings. You have to have minutes of those meetings. You have to have bylaws. And most investors, where it's one person on their own or two or three people who got together, they don't want that formality. They want to have that kind of fluid environment where they can make decisions on the fly. So an LLC is typically a better vehicle for that. But one mistake that a lot of investors make is they'll buy a property in an LLC and they'll stop there. Well, in my example, you were buying an apartment building. So when you buy an apartment building, there's two parts to your ownership. There's you owning the apartment building, and then there's you managing the apartment building. As a manager of the apartment building, you could be sued also for negligent management, right? So if you want to be extra prudent, what I usually tell investors to do is you set up an LLC to hold the property. The LLC is like a fictitious person. That's the owner of the property. That LLC is now hiring a management company, which is you, but you need to protect yourself as well. So because it's an inexpensive vehicle, an easy one to set up, I would say set up two LLCs. And a lot of people say, oh, why do I need that? It seems very cumbersome. The expense of an LLC, the minimum expense, is $800 a year that you have to pay in minimum taxes. It's the same ownership of the company and the same ownership of the management company, it's what's called a flow-through entity. So it gets taxed like one, you paid $800 twice, but otherwise it gets taxed like one entity. But you get double the protection. Now, since I'm a lawyer, I'm risk averse, right? So I want you to have extra protection, so I want to make sure you also get really good insurance. Now, in the beginning of the deal, that starts with title insurance, right? You go out there and you get good title insurance. But one thing that a lot of investors do wrong, or a lot of home purchasers do wrong, is they get the title report, they look at it quickly, they don't see anything glaring, and they put it aside. Have somebody read that title report with you, whether it's an attorney, your real estate agent, your lender. Someone has to review that title report with you. I'll give you an example. I had a client who purchased a home on a hillside. His home is here, there's another home above him. He has a street in front of him, the other home has a street in front of it. And when he bought the home, there was a sewer easement, because sewers run downhill, right? So there's a sewer easement that runs through my client's property. And he saw it, he thought, oh, no big deal, right? These people need to have a sewer, there has to be a sewer easement. He didn't think of getting any kind of insurance dealing with the sewer easement. Well, sure enough, my client buys the property, builds his dream home, puts a beautiful jacuzzi, beautiful landscaping, and there's a sewer problem. My client has an easement. He's required to give access to that sewer to the neighbor above. That neighbor now has the right to come in, break the hardscape, go into the ground and fix the sewer. And so those are things that when you look at it, you say, oh, sewer is very common easement. Well, you want to know where is that sewer easement? Driveway easements. With residential properties, is it built before 1978? Then it's rent control, right? So these are things that you want to think about. These are my problems ahead. So part A, how am I protecting myself? I'm setting up an LLC. Now there might be reasons that you might want to have a different structure. So I'd say on the regular deal, you're going to want an LLC. But let's say you have an investor who you want to be a silent investor. And that person just wants to put money in and they want to limit their liability. They want to be as far away from the deal as possible. That you might want to create what's called a limited partnership. Right? Where you have an investor whose function is very limited. And then you're the general partner whose function is greater. You're running the company. But even there, we can create kind of an entity within an entity. So you as the general partner can be an LLC. The LLC can be the general partner in the limited partnership. So there's lots of ways to structure a deal that will provide you protection. You can never protect yourself from being sued as an individual, right? If someone out there thinks that U.S. liability is going to sue you, but you can put roadblocks in their way. My practice is divided between counseling and litigation. Right? So I do a lot of litigation, and you try to do everything you can to avoid litigation, but that doesn't mean there's not some lawyer out there who's going to take a case for someone who slipped and fell on the property, and they decide that they don't want to go after the LLC, they want to go after the individual. So when you have an entity structure, probably the most important thing to remember is treat it like a separate individual. If that LLC needs a loan because you didn't put enough money to start the LLC, give it a loan, charge it interest. You're basically charging yourself interest, but what you're doing is when someone sues you as an individual, you're going to be able to come to the court and say, that building belongs to the LLC. And in fact, when I loaned it money, I charged it interest. Even though it's me on both sides, I am respecting that legal entity. So whether it's a corporation, LLC, you want to make that a practice. Now let's talk about once you're in the deal. One of the things that I've been advising a lot of clients on lately who are buying residential properties, especially pre-1978, but in general, residential properties.
I'm sorry, one question. What do we know about pre-1978 homes? You need what? Lead-based paint disclosure.
Right. So there's been a trend in a lot of these law firms opening up calling themselves tenant right lawyers. But really what they do is they try to get as many tenants who are being evicted, usually because they're not paying the rent, into their offices so they can look at their leases. If the lease has an attorney fee provision on it, meaning the prevailing party shall get its attorney's fees, and if the property is pre-1978, I guarantee you these lawyers are going to be able to find some technicality, some I you didn't dot, some T you didn't cross, in order to get that unlawful detainer kicked out, and so they can come back and ask for attorney's fees. So the thing I've been advising all my clients now is on residential properties, take out the attorney fee provision. There is no attorney fee provision anymore. And if you think about it, it makes sense. If you're evicting someone, it's because they can't pay rent. If you win the eviction and get attorney fees, they probably can't pay your attorney's fees anyway. If you lose, you're the investor. You should have money. They can get attorney's fees from you. So get rid of it. You don't need it.
Ophir, I'm going to have to stop you, only because this is fantastic. In fact, this has been my favorite part so far. So on the break, you're just going to meet with me in my office. No, on the break, please come find Ophir. We're going to break in about 25 minutes. Get his card at least.